let's talk about this Marian Anderson piece. It was kind of deep. And this is the thing. This is what I didn't know. I wasn't aware that like her career really kind of got up and going at the age of 60. I was like, oh, I'm like, who knew that? I did not know that. Now, let's talk about Miss Marian and your relationship with American Masters. You and American Masters and PBS, y'all ride hard for each other.
Ride hard, we ride hard. My girl, Julie Sachs, Michael Cantor, we're riding hard. And it is because history has to have a change. And the documentary filmmaker is the griot who sat by the door and said, 67 reigns ago, this is what happened. Now we can't get to that griot. We're displaced. So the griot has a camera, a film, and some funds. Chase Bank, whoever else is out there. You have to fund Black filmmakers so they can tell their stories. These stories don't get told because we want to tell them. It doesn't get told because we're capable of telling them. But when we have people like the Better Angels Society, like all of these groups that got together, Carnegie Hall, all of these people got together, wrote checks, Wavelength, all of these funders, you can see them at the end of the film, but that's where the rubber meets the road. You cannot tell these stories without the money to tell them. And it's important to our history because we are at a critical time. And what Marian Anderson proved is that she had a God-given talent. I love the way Denise Graves says, I don't want to misquote Miss Graves, okay? But if I do, I hope she will forgive me.
I'm sure she'll be fine.
We were told we couldn't even speak English. So how were we supposed to learn German, French, and Italian? Well, born in 1897, Marian Anderson did that. She conquered those languages in order to sing, and not to sing to assimilate, but to excavate the voice and all of its capabilities of 3.5 octaves. So we got those in various ways. Roland Hayes, who's mentioned in the film, who was a mentor to her, he got that. This didn't make the film because it wasn't about him, it was about her. But he got that voice from calling hogs. The way that Black people in the South called hogs, they sustained a long note back and forth to get the hogs to come in. And he had such a range because he learned that from his father. We brought this with us. We are the skin blood evidence that there's one race. Or you, me, Lapita, come on now. We're coming from all the color schemes of the world, and our humanity must be reckoned with. And that's what Marian Anderson said. If she wasn't people say that she was demure. I didn't hear that in the tapes, but I heard the shrewdness of knowing what to say, when to say, where to say it, to get to where you needed to go next.
Why? That's the beauty of where we are right now, because as you and I both know, there was a time in this country where you couldn't even look at a white person without somebody or without repercussions happening.
Emmett Till.
i.e. Emmett Till, exactly.
Something that didn't make the film. She once had to iron her dress in the alley because even though they let her in the hotel, they wouldn't let her use an iron. So if you iron your dress in the alley and then you go sing in 3 or 4 languages till people cry, what did it take? What did it cost you?
Speaking, I'm so glad that you brought up some of the things that aren't in the documentary. Can you break off one more little tidbit of what may not be in there that we would have loved to have seen, but you just for budgetary reasons or time reasons didn't have the opportunity to include it?
It was a time reason, honestly. And the time reason is essentially this. You start at a point of failure. You cannot in 2 hours do justice to a life of 90 some years. You can't tell it all. you don't know it all. And with danger seen and unseen, the person who it's about don't even know it all. So you do your best. One thing that I really tried to keep, but at the end, here's where the cutting happens. If it's not about Marian Anderson, then it's got to go. And so it may be about a facet of her, but it needs to land on her front and center. Marian Anderson had a wonderful relationship with her nephew, James DePriest. James DePriest was the boy and the man of a generation because he was the only child between the three sisters, all of whom could sing. Marian Anderson took it to the bridge, but the other two sisters could sing, Elise and Ethel. Ethel had one son from a man who was of Indian descent. And they learned this when he came to the funeral, because when he died, everybody came in garb, in Native American garb, excuse me. So now Jimmy DePriest was able to grow up because his aunt loved her some Jimmy with every opportunity. Oh, I want to be a lawyer. Oh, I want to be this. And then eventually she had given him a piece of music. I believe it was a Schubert piece, and said, learn this. At 16, he learned it back and forth. And he was at one point invited to the King of Thailand, had him performing the music, and he caught polio over there. Mm-hmm. And because of who Marian Anderson was, she was able to call the Kennedys and say, get my nephew back over there. And unfortunately, by the time they got him, it was still too late, and he became paralyzed, but he became quite a famous conductor on his own. The idea that she could pick up the phone by that point and help get her nephew home showed relationship with the president of the United States. And the fact that he was even over singing for the King of Thailand, but of course, that was not a primary of her story, but it meant a lot to her. I think what also meant a lot to her that I hope comes through was how much she loved her family and how much she loved her. It was her mother, her sisters, her family, and who she was as a family person. So I think that was really important, and we could only use some of that. Yeah.
Thank you, Miss Rita Coburn. You know, I ride or die for you just like American Masters and PBS do. You know this, right?
Yes, yes. And I so appreciate it. It was my good fortune to sit at the table where you were at Chaz Ebert's Ebert Fest, and for us to meet. And if I can say anything to people that see this, the relationships that were made when somebody has power, and it's like when Tupac said, I'm coming in the door. I won't go through the whole lyrics, but y'all, I'm hungry.
You better be quoting Tupac.
Okay, sorry about that, but I'm not going, because it'll be out of context if I say what he said. But anyway, the deal is that if somebody is inside the house and you want to get in and you don't have the power to get in, somebody has to open the door. Be a door opener, be a door knocker. Mary McLeod Bethune was already inside because Eleanor Roosevelt rode for her with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So when Marian Anderson knocked on the door, it wasn't a new rodeo. She opened the door for Marian Anderson. And unless people break it down, white people with power don't take all the lakefront property, open up the door. And when you open up the door, then we can all learn something from each other and sit at that table and make a better place for all of us to be. But you're going to have to open up that door.
I know that's right. And that is the perfect place to end this. Thank you so much, Rita.
Thank you.